Well, a very good morning to you. Hi, my name is Kasim, and welcome to my podcast, Journal Entries. I really, really, really appreciate it. And as you can tell, actually, before we get into it, I hope you're okay, by the way. I hope your week has been treating you well. I hope everything is good in your life. But for those of you who are visual and you're watching this online, as you can tell, today I'm going to be talking about one of my books that I wrote, which is about how to set goals. And specifically, I wanted to get into really the fact that you are not lazy, that really you are motivated and you have potential, and there are things that you can achieve in your life, but you just don't have necessarily the systems. In fact, this is one of the massive things that motivated me to write the book, because it came to my attention that there were a lot of boys and men in particular who felt like they could not achieve anything, who felt like they didn't have any potential, who felt like they weren't worthy, who felt like they couldn't manifest anything in their life. They couldn't poke at life and life would bounce back. They couldn't uh, be be productive and actually achieve the results that they wanted. That's how they felt. And I didn't really agree with that. What I observed was that what people wanted very much was possible, but it had to be in alignment with who they were, what they want, and it had to be worth it. Because what I've observed in life is it's not always the journey. It's not always the goal. It's not always the success that is of most value. Sometimes the thing that is of most value is actually who you're becoming. It's actually the journey. Is actually the principles, the lessons, the fundamentals. That sometimes is what is most valuable. But in order to do that, you have to have some sort of a goal. You have to have some sort of an aim. You have to have a North Star, right? You have to have a vision. What do they say in the Bible? Without a vision, the people will perish. So, what I began to realize is so many people were unhappy in their lives, they were depressed. And in part of it is because they didn't have that North Star. They didn't even try to achieve success. They didn't even try to even envision a better life for themselves. They were living within a narrative, and the narrative was, I'm not worthy, I'm not enough, nothing good is ever going to happen to me, I'm worthless, I'm pathetic. In other words, they were playing within the victim mentality narrative. And so many of us live in that mentality. And what I suggest and I propose in the book is, why not become a survivor? Human beings can overcome their problems. Human beings can overcome their issues. Human beings can rise above their issues and literally grow beyond them and partner with people and be able to actually achieve success. They can overcome the difficulties and the challenges that they may be experiencing in their lives. And this is one of the things that I wanted to articulate and share with people. That you don't have to be a victim, that you don't have to be the sort of person who is subject to fate. You can actually design your destiny. You can decide where you want to go, what path you want to follow, what the future looks like for you, and you can quite literally start taking steps in order to achieve that. And it's so relevant, because I think a lot of people don't even realize that they're playing within a narrative that, a bit like when you're watching a movie. As you're watching the movie, there is an origin story, and then da 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 da. The reality of life has been, my observation is that some of the narratives that we've been living in don't serve the best parts of who we are as people, or we've picked up other people's narratives and we're living within their narratives and not within the narrative that best suits us, that work best for us as people. It's interesting. In October, I'll be starting to train to be a marriage counselor, and one of the things that I mean, part of the reason why I've done that is because I've been studying marriages and couples for a long time anyway. But I just thought that I would formalize my qualifications and being able to work with people. And one of the things that I think a lot of couples struggle with is how do you find your soulmate? And then secondly, how do you have an incredible kind of marriage? Now, most people confuse these two because they think if they find their soulmate, then that is automatically going to create uh, this competent, thriving, excellent, long-standing marriage. But unfortunately, these are two very different things. You can find your spouse, your soulmate, the one who is meant for you, but that person may not necessarily want to grow. They might not necessarily want to manifest um, and have flexibility. For example, one of the things that couples struggle with um, in terms of the longevity of their marriage or their relationship is roles. And when you look at the roles that people play, the roles that they're playing aren't the roles that necessarily fit with them, but many times they're living within the narratives and the roles that society deems is appropriate for them or their family or their culture deems is appropriate for them. Yesterday, I was talking to somebody and I was saying to them, in some relationships, it is the woman who is the driver, who is the competitive one, who is the entrepreneurship one, who is the one who's more driven by more driven by money, who is a go-getter in terms of the professional and the productivity in terms of work and career side. And the man actually is much more of the nurturer, is much more of the one that can be at home with the kids, much more domestic. The problem is in some families and in some couples, this cannot be. They won't allow the different couples cannot play into the role that actually best suits them because that would go against the narrative of their family, of their culture, of their religion. And so this just causes massive conflict. It causes massive friction. It puts this couple in a state where they're constantly drifting and drifting and drifting and drifting away from the center of who they are. And they're wearing a role which isn't natural to them. That doesn't mean, of course, that as people we can't grow into roles and stuff like that, but you're going to thrive better in something that is meant for you as opposed to trying to fit into something that was not meant for you. And I think this is really, 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 really important. Many people, when you begin to look at your life, and it's one of the things I talk about. In fact, it's the first step in the 6 steps that I talk about in the book, which is that you've got to take a review. You've got to look back at your life and actually take a look at where have you been? What's working for you? What isn't working? What is, are you being productive? Um, what principles have you learned? What have you learned works and doesn't work? What have you learned about other people? How do you perceive things? What goals have you had in the past? Have you noticed that you're somebody who doesn't like being told what to do? Have you noticed that you're somebody who likes structure? Is safety the thing that you need the most? What are your needs for you as a person, and what are the best ways that you found are best to meet those needs? Because unless you look at where you've been, then you cannot really build a really strong vision for where you want to go, right? Um, so I think, people, I really wanted to say that a lot of people, it's not the current results of their life are not a real true reflection of their capacity and their potential. It might be that they just simply don't have the systems. They don't have the blueprint. They're not living within the roles and the narratives. Basically, they haven't consciously built the life that they want. Right. And sometimes you can, I was saying to somebody the other day that there are some people who are born into the wrong family, not because they're bad people, but they just simply, or their family's bad, but they're black sheep of the family. Their family that they needed is not going to, in order to fulfill their needs and their desires and to fit in, they may have to leave their family because within their family, actually, believe it or not, they don't fit into their family, right? Within their family, they don't belong. And actually, there's a family out there that they will come better serve them and that they'll be able to thrive more in. And I think that's important to talk about. And I think a lot of people don't really talk about that, you know. And I think abandoning your family or leaving your family or becoming estranged or setting boundaries for yourself is something that a lot of people have never done in their life. And that's one of the things that I try to encourage people to do in this book, to set up boundaries, to build parameters, to literally build your house on the rocks, not the sand. And it may be that you have to move. Some people may have to move to a different country in order to manifest their greatness, in order to be who they want to be. The other thing that I also wanted to talk about is reasons, because a lot of people are not motivated to build the life that they want or to start really living consciously and intentionally because they haven't really got the reason. Yesterday, I was talking to somebody and I was saying to them, if you look at most people don't have the capacity for greatness. They have the capacity to achieve just the most remarkable life and results and lifestyle, but a lot of them don't have the reasons. They don't. They've. And if you look at many people who thriving, who are really living their best life, many of them had hit rock bottom at some point. But you don't have to reach rock bottom in order to change your life. You can do it by a decision. You can do it by inspiration. And that's really one of the things that I talk about in the book, which is you can actually inspire yourself by creating this incredible vision for yourself. You don't have to reach rock bottom. You can literally give yourself reasons to do well. Give yourself reasons to achieve greatness and unlock your potential and live the most remarkable life. And it can literally be as simple as making the decision to be so and to do so. No one has to inspire you. No one has to motivate you. No one has to tell you what to do. It's as simple as that. You wake up one day and you say, this is where I want to go. This is what I want to do. And that is it. You just go. Anyone can do that on any given day, right? And so I think it's really important for me to say that because I recognize that a lot of people, they're like, well, Kasim, I've gone through this and this has happened. And I'm like, bro, you can actually motivate yourself. You can get yourself out of a depression. And I'm not talking about clinical depression. That's an entirely different thing altogether. You need reasons and you need strong reasons. And those reasons may have to be beyond superficial reasons, because when I look at most people and I look at why they're not achieving the level of productivity and success that they can, many times it's because the reasons that they have for doing it are shit, to put it quite bluntly. They haven't got enough or big enough reasons to do well. Many people, what their reasons are superficial in that it's all about looking good, it's all about impressing other people, it's all about fitting in, it's all about belonging. And what I say to people is, what would happen if you didn't have to fit in? What would happen if you went your own path and you became misunderstood and people didn't understand your vision and where you were going because you were the only one who could see it? Leaders go first. Leaders usually see what other people do not see, and they lead from the front, and then other people follow them. And sometimes, in order to manifest and achieve the greatness that we're capable of, we have to actually start to lead ourselves first. You know, I remember many years ago, my car broke down, and when my car broke down, I sat in the car and was waiting for somebody because it was on a busy road, and I was waiting for somebody to come and help me push the car, and nothing was happening. So I got out of the car and started pushing the car, and guess what happened? Other people started coming to. They saw me pushing the car, and they saw me. They came over to try to help me push the car. And essentially, what I'm suggesting here is sometimes you have to start by yourself, alone. Sometimes you have to. Um, get going and push yourself, and then other people you have to do, and then other people will help you. You have to do the bulk of the lifting. You have to start and do the bulk of the work. There are people out there who want to start a YouTube channel, who want to set up a company, who want to become an entrepreneur. But the problem is they're waiting for other people to do the bulk work. They want to be liked. They want to be approved. They want other people. Most people don't know what they want. Most people don't know what's good. Most people don't know what is innovative. It's one of those things in marketing, isn't it? In marketing, they constantly saying people don't really know what you want. You've got to tell them what they want. So that's the other thing. Motivations. I think a lot of people, they're not lazy. They just don't really have reasons to do well. Reasons that mean something to them. Reasons that are not superficial. But the other thing as well is I think a lot of people have internalized failure because the things that they've been trying to succeed at have been things that they were never fitted to they, how do I explain this? The things that they're trying to succeed at, they were never going to succeed at because they were in the wrong race. They were trying to cook a dish that they didn't even want to eat, right? It's like getting somebody to cook a vegetarian dish when this person loves meat. The fact that they don't like vegetarian food and they're having to try to perfect and be competent at it is going to create friction, or what in spiritual word is resistance. And the problem is it's very easy to internalize that especially if you failed very early on, it's very easy to internalize that and think that you're really not worthy, that you're not competent, that you're not capable, that you don't have potential. I would personally just say to you, I don't really agree with that. I think a lot of people have grown up in systems, whether it's the education system, the family system, various systems, and these systems have the person has had to change themselves for the system, not the system changing and tailoring themselves to the person. And so consequently, people have lost really important aspects of themselves, or they forego them, or they've shrink them down. And so one of the things that I talk about in the book is that you want to unlock that. You want to amplify that. You want to pay more attention to those parts of yourselves that maybe you have forgotten about, that you've been functioning under deficiency. And what I say is you need to pump more nutrients into the areas that are your strengths, the areas where you thrive in. It's shocking when you start to look at how many people spend a humongous amount of their time in areas that are not their strengths. They spend humongous amount of time in areas that are not areas where they naturally succeed in, right? And what I'm suggesting and what I'm saying is, why not spend the vast majority of your time at things that you're good at? The problem is you can't do that unless you found out what those things are, which means you're going to have to look at yourself and say, what am I good at and what am I not good at? And then make the decision to start spending time on the areas that you're naturally good at. And the problem is, if you do that, which is why I understand how difficult this is, you may not fit in, because the things that you may have been brought up in a culture and a system and an environment where you've just gone with the flow, not necessarily decided your path and walked your own path. And so if you decide to actually not go with the flow and be intentional and be conscious, you may have to do a lot of internal work. The biggest enemy that you have to confront is yourself, because you may have to basically look like you're crazy and look like you're mad, and you may have to fight yourself and say, no, I know that I've been a failure before, I know that I haven't been worthy before, I know that I felt like I couldn't do stuff before, but in spite of all of that, I know that there's great things out there for me. I know that I can work hard and I can achieve greatness. I know that I can put in the work and I can really move things forward in my life. We all have an internal voice, a voice inside of our heads that talks to us. I've got to be honest with you. Some of you who are listening to me, you would be arrested if I expose the things that you say to yourself. It's crazy. I'm not worthy, I'm pathetic, I just want to kill myself, I'd rather die. Um, the world would be better off without me. I'm a failure. Why can't I get anything right? This internal voice that some of us have is insane. Insane, right? So I really, really do think that there is an internal blueprint, but not just internal and external blueprint that we actually have to or may have to shift, recreate, restructure, make up. Um, I once read something that said sometimes you have to kill the person who you were born to be so that you can birth the person who you want to be. That's a very serious statement. There are some people who, in order, the life that they've been is not going to work. Because people forget, that we can do multiple things in life. We have multiple skills and we have multiple potentials and we can achieve multiple things. I believe a lot of us forget this. What I mean by this is, many years ago, I once spoke to a man. He was an older man, and I was speaking to him, and I was speaking to him about the life that he had. And I said, "My God, you've achieved such incredible things." You know what he said to me? He said to me, "Yes, but I could have lived five other different lives." In other words, he was saying to me, there are genuinely different paths. You could have been a doctor and that could have set your life a certain way. You could have ended up having children and or not having children, and that would have set your path in a certain way. Do you see what I'm trying to say here? Right? And can I just say something? One of the other things as well is that you're not lazy. It might be that the problem is that you feel stuck and you don't understand that this is a phase. In fact, this is one of the things that I talk a lot about in the book, which is that I talk about the fact that, look, you have to understand that things can get better. You have to understand that things can improve. You have to understand that there are these seasons, there are cyclical systems in the world. There's timing. Timing is really, 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 really important. And, in today's society, in today's world, we don't really talk about timing enough. We do not talk about timing enough, but timing is really, really important, right? Timing is one of those really important things in the blueprint. It's one of the steps. If you do the right thing at the wrong time, you will fail and think that you're a failure when you're not. One of the things that I say in the book is anything is once. If one attempts to try to have everything that they want all at once, it will consume them. And so one of the things that I would recommend to you is to understand what season are you in. I remember Tony Robbins once said, people are not lazy, they simply have impotent goals. That is, goals that do not inspire them. You know? So, as I've been saying, one of the things that I've talked a lot about is why people fail, why some people get stuck, you know? Part of it is they've had very vague goals, or the goals that they've had haven't really had much clarity. They've kind of said, "Well, I want to get rich." What the hell does that even mean? Rich as in what's rich? Are we talking about rich in terms of money, rich in terms of health? Because if you are a multimillionaire but you have cancer, are you really rich? If you have five kids but all of them are with different women, are you really rich in terms of your contact, in terms of your connection with the kids, in terms of your ability to be there for them? Are you? So one of the things that I think is really important and why people fail a lot is they haven't defined what they want. It's really, really important. But also, and I said this earlier on, they've had no they haven't, because they haven't defined what it is that they want. It means that there is this gap between where they're trying to go and what they want, and there is no contact, there is no um flow, there is no connection with where they're trying to go, what they want, and where they're at right now. They haven't integrated what they want, where they're trying to go, with who they are, right? Or because they haven't done all the fundamental stuff and the basic stuff, what ends up happening is they try to wing it. They try to do things really fast. They try to what's the word I'm looking for? They try to use charisma, right? I bet you know somebody who uses charisma. Oh, they're charming and they're sweet and they will say the right things and they will, you know what I mean? They will use charisma. But actually, when it gets to the what's that phrase? When the tire meets the road, when you've actually got to show up, when you look at the results, when you look at the systems, when you look at the habits, when you look at the mindset, there is a lack of integrity, you know? And a huge amount of this is, accountability. When you have structures and you have systems, then you become accountable to that system. Because in order to have a system, somebody has to maintain the system. Somebody has to own the system. I say to people all the time, don't tell me what you want. Let me just follow you around for a couple of weeks. Because your systems will tell me what it is that you want, because it will become very evident the path that you're on just by your systems, the way that you think, the books that you read, the way where you go during the week, where you invest your spare money, where you live, the language that you use. All of these things will tell me something about you. That may mean, and I always say to people, the first person who you have to be accountable to is yourself. That's the most difficult things to do, to be accountable to yourself, to do stuff even though no one's watching, no one believes it, no one wants it for you. That is very, very, very difficult. But unless you're able to become accountable to yourself, I think a huge amount of life becomes very, very, very difficult. Because what ends up happening is other people then end up wanting more for you than you want for yourself, which is problem. It's a massive problem. You cannot have a situation where other people want more for you than you want for yourself. No, let me rephrase that. There can be a short period, right? A transition where indeed there are some things that you want for yourself that other people don't want for you. That's fair enough. That can happen. But ultimately, there has to be a switch at some point where you want more for yourself than other people want for you. So, what does it look like to actually begin to look at goal setting? And I've been saying a lot about this. I think the first thing is you've got to actually decide what you want. Secondly, you've actually got to break it down into size bits. How are you going to be practical? How are you going to do it on a day to day basis? Not theory, practical. How are you going to be able to track it? You cannot improve what you cannot measure, is what I say to people. You cannot improve what you cannot measure. But also, in order to have momentum, I use this word a lot in this book, momentum. In order to have momentum, you've got to be able to do the same things over and over and over again. Fundamentals. You're going to be able to repeat things over and over and over and over and over again. That's how you get momentum. Consistency. But you cannot be consistent if you cannot track what you did yesterday and the day before and the week before and the month before. In order to do that, you need momentum. You need habits. You need consistency. Because when you do that, it then builds habits, right? That's why I said to you earlier on. You can tell. You don't need to tell me what you want. Just show me. Let me just follow you around for a couple of weeks. Let me just see your routines. Let me see your habits. Let me see what language you use. Let me see how much time you spend on FIFA. Let me see how much money you spend on golf. Let me see how much time you spend on shoes. You tell me you want to become rich, and then you go and spend £400 on Jordans. Tells me everything I need to know. You say you want an incredible relationship, and you've never been to therapy, and you haven't done any internal work on yourself, and you haven't read any books on relationships, and you haven't listened to any podcasts or anything like that on a great relationship. Tells me everything I need to know. That doesn't mean you don't have potential. That doesn't mean you don't have capacity. But in this period of time, if we were making an assessment, this is what we would see. So I guess, because people say, what's the core message? It's one of the things that people ask me all the time. What's your core message? I think that really the core message for me in this book is you need to have a system. You need to have a blueprint, and that blueprint needs to be inconsistent. It needs to be consistent with where you're trying to go and what you're trying to achieve. Because if your systems do not align with where you're trying to be, what you're trying to achieve, you're going to fail. You're going to struggle. And then you're going to blame the system, when in reality, the system isn't the problem. It's You're not going to blame the system. You're going to become victimized and blame other people, when in reality, the problem is that the systems that you have and the blueprint that you have isn't in integrity, it isn't in alignment with where you're trying to go. The other thing is that there has to be some practicality. Theory is important. Understanding is important. Information is important. But that's one part of a larger piece of the puzzle. The other piece of the puzzle is you need practicality. You can say that you can lift and bench 2 plates until you actually get to the gym. Because when you get into the gym, now you need another thing, practicality, right? You've actually got to do it, but you're not going to do it overnight. You're going to have systems where you, for example, you go and start off with 1 plate, and then you work up every week, adding on maybe 5 kg or whatever it may be. You need the right blueprint. If you're trying to become a multimillionaire, or you're trying to do property, or you're trying to do cryptocurrency, you're trying to go to university, you need to have the right blueprint. You need to have the right systems. And the great thing about systems and blueprints is that most of the things that we want in life, somebody has already achieved it. So we don't even need to make it up. I always say to people, and it's one of the things that I say in the book, is don't make it up. Don't pioneer until you've mastered something. Don't innovate until you've mastered something, or you are at the top of the game in that area. Innovation comes later, not in the very beginning. In the very beginning, you really need to master the fundamentals and the basics. The other thing is, of course, and there's a third core message, is that you can start off with nothing. And it all starts with a decision. You can literally wake up one morning, be listening to this in an afternoon, and say, do you know what, Kasim? I've decided that I want to go and achieve greatness. I've decided that I want to go and unlock my potential. I've decided that I'm going to start a business. I've decided that I'm going to get healthy. I've decided that I'm going to connect better with my children. I've decided that I want to have kids. I've decided that I want to go traveling. And these are the countries, dot, 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 dot. I've decided that I'm going to go to university. I've decided that I want to become mentally strong. I no longer want to experience huge amounts of anxiety, stress, depression, psychosis, bipolar, um, OCD, whatever it may be. It is possible to start. Now, it doesn't mean that you're going to get to 10. If you start from zero, it doesn't mean you're going to get to 10. But I always say to people, seven, even six is better than zero. The person who you become in trying to achieve your goal sometimes is where the value is. Because you may learn on your path, actually, nah, I thought this was important to me, but it really isn't important to me. I thought I wanted to achieve this, but actually, it really isn't that important to me, right? Is Abraham Lincoln who said that discipline is choosing between what you want now and what you want most. Arthur Ashe said, start where you're at, use what you have, do what you can. Zig Ziglar said, if you aim for nothing, you hit at nothing every single time. And the great thing about having goals is there is a lot of physiological and chemical benefits to it. Dopamine is triggered by progress, not perfection. Small wins create this motivation loop where as you gain momentum and you do well, it inspires you and motivates you to do and go for bigger things. So it becomes this loop. But also identity-based goals stick better than outcome-based goals. Right? James Clear said that. So my closing message, as we close off this podcast, is really look, understand that you're not necessarily lazy and you're not incompetent and you're worthless. It's just that you may not have the blueprint. You may not have the habits. And the other thing is that you're too scared to be seen starting small. You're not prepared to be disliked or misunderstood. And I suggest to you, and I'm offering you that if you're prepared to be misunderstood and be disliked and to go, and be prepared to go first, you really could achieve a most remarkable life. Anything that you want within reason is possible if it is right for you. I'm not talking about manifestation, hoo-ha stuff. I'm really saying that most of the things that you want in your life, you could get if you really wanted to. You cannot change destination overnight, but you can change direction. And also, the destination isn't necessarily of the most value. It may be the steps 1, 2, 3, 4 to getting there that actually have of most value. Because you may be able to extract the principles, the lessons, the friendships, the connections, whatever you've learned from those, and then take them into a different field. It's just a suggestion, but ultimately you can do whatever it is that you want. I can't tell you what you should and should not be doing, but that's what I wanted to share in this book. And I hope it's been really useful. And I really, really want to thank you so much for listening to me as usual. I hope that this has had some sort of utility and it's brought you some value. And I ask you to like and subscribe to my channel to get more and like this on the various platforms. But yeah, the book is available on Amazon if you want to get it. Um, any questions, please email me. But otherwise, I'll speak to you very soon. Bye for now.